Welcome back, dear viewers. You're still watching Nile Cruise here on Nile TV International, and we're coming to you away from the Muhammad Ali Manial Palace Museum here in the heart of Cairo. And it is time now to talk about the ancient Egyptian celebrations of the New Year, as we are Rana, in and around that New Year period. Happy New Year to all our viewers. Ancient Egyptians used to celebrate the New Year with a slew of festivals to commemorate the passage of time, to give thanks and to pray for the Nile's flow to continue. We are delighted to host here with us Dr. Yahya Abdel Kader, tourism counselor, to tell us more about ancient Egyptian celebrations of the New Year. Happy New Year, Dr. Abdel Kader. Always a great pleasure to have you with us.
Happy New Year to you, and thank you very much for bringing us to this prestigious location nationwide.
Thank you.
Dr. Abdel, of course, always a pleasure to have you with us on Nile Cruise. And we kick off asking you a very important question, which is, why did ancient Egyptians celebrate New Year to start with?
Well, actually, Egypt, like the life of the ancient Egyptian has been regulated by the River Nile because, like the whole of North Africa is a massive desert, but we were blessed to have the River Nile flowing for millions of years. And even, if you remember the words of Pharaoh, like when he was talking to Prophet Moses, لي ملك مصر وهذه الأنهار تجري من تحتي. We have only two branches of the Nile, but there was at that time, 3,000 years ago, 5 to 7 branches. And that's why, Egypt has been blessed by the Nile, and it was like a country famous for its agriculture and growth. And that's why Egyptians, they were determined to celebrate the inundation of the country every year in the middle of August, on the 19th of August, with the Orion constellation. There is a star, very bright star, called the Sirius star, and when it starts like shining from the mid-June, but on the 19th of August, it becomes so bright, brighter than the sun. That's why the Greeks call it scorching star. It is its size is like double the size of the sun itself. And with the the spotting of the Sirius star, the Nile starts flooding from the tributaries, of the Blue Nile, and the White Nile from Ethiopia, plains and flowing into Egypt and into the Mediterranean. So every year, they were celebrating, and the celebration was that the golden sacred statue of God Ammon was going to be removed from the Holy of Holies, Sacre de Sacre, from the Karnak temple, and sailing in the Nile. And they will be escorted by the priests, and musicians, and parade, and moving to Luxor temple. And this is, they have like priestesses, Egyptian priestesses, and the statue is going to be left there for 11 days. That was in the Old Kingdom. But recently in the New Kingdom, that festival went on for 27 days, and all over Thebes, ancient Thebes, which is current day Luxor, there were, manifestation of ceremonial festivities, singing and giving food and having banquets for the whole 11 or 27 days. So that marks the New Year for the Egyptian, because they thanking the River Nile for flooding and bringing them fertility and prosperity.
Well, surely, Dr. Abdel Kader, the celebration of a New Year differed from one civilization to another. For instance, surely you've talked to us about the pharaonic civilization. We've had numerous civilizations here in Egypt throughout the course of history. So could you tell us about perhaps other landmark celebrations that we had celebrating in New Year in connection with the type of civilization that existed at the time in the cradle of civilization, Egypt?
Well, concerning Egypt, we moved from Pharaonic to Coptic to Greco, and then to Roman civilization. And Roman was like a pagan civilization, they have all the gods, of Aphrodite and Zeus and all this. And then in 434, Christianity has been adopted by Constantine. And since that day, like many of the manifestations of ancient Egypt that developed through Greco-Roman periods has been adopted by Christianity. And historically, scholars, like they talk about the mythology of Osiris and his coming back to life, and that was very, like typical and resemblance of Jesus Christ, and that he passed away and then he was resurrected 3 days, and escalating, to heaven. So the mythology for the ancient Egyptians, from Isis and Osiris and Horus and Set mythology went into, they were very swift to adapt to Christianity because the resemblance between the mythology of Osiris and resurrection of Jesus, and then most of the traditions of ancient Egypt went through Christianity. Once I was listening to Dr. Wasim Sisi, and he mentioned that like the ancient Egyptian used to have like roasted goose and ducks for the celebrations, and have like green like pine trees that time. Currently, he says in Germany up till today they celebrate Christmas through serving like a roasted goose. But of course, in the US and Europe, they use turkey.
Yeah.
But there was no turkey by the time in Egypt. That's why Europe has moved, like our traditions from Egyptian to Coptic to Greco-Roman to current day, like that's still the traits of Egyptian civilization growing through Europe up to now.
Dr. Abdel, how did they celebrate the New Year, and was the festival a secluded ceremony within a temple, or does it involve a broader landscape and a greater number of participants?
Well, as we all know, like the Karnak temple was, like consecrated, like for the priesthoods, and like the top, like echelons of the ancient Egyptian, like religion and beliefs, like there was Zion and Amun and Ra and all the top deities. There was like inner court and outer court. So the public, like were on these occasions are allowed for the first time to be in the outer court, not to go into the Holy of Holies, which is, like dedicated to the Pharaoh or the high priesthood. But they will be celebrating for like about 10 days or like a whole month, as I mentioned, 27 days in the New Kingdom. And there was going to be like a royal bark that's carrying, sailing, like with the statue of Amun, and the statue is going to spend 11 days in Luxor temple, and then to go back. He came by the Nile, is going to go through the El Kibash Avenue, which is Rams Avenue, which is currently being renovated by our government. So that was the annual celebration. And we trace this currently. We have Mulid Abul Haggag in Luxor. They do the same thing currently. They have a park. And then they have like the Molid, that goes on for 2 weeks and celebrations. And even the Mosque of Abu Haggag, part of it, like is based on foundations at the Karnak Temple, at Luxor Temple. And that's why, like the tradition, they don't die, like they develop, as we see.
Wonderful, sir.
So, Dr. Abdel Kader, what does the great number of such festivals in different even when it concerns different civilizations, tell us about the culture of Egyptians in general. I mean, even the Islamic celebrations of the greater Bayram, the lesser Bayram, the birth of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and so on, has a special taste and perhaps wider activities than in most other places.
Well, like I was reviewing material, like in archaeology magazine and research, like journals. For example, like the ancient Egyptians used to go to Abydos, like for the pilgrimage. And if you look at the temples, you'll see them like wearing like white linen, and there's like one shoulder, like exposed. Exactly that what the Muslims do when they go to around Mecca, like to circle 7 times, like at the holy site in Kaaba al-Musharrafa.
Dr. Abdel, what event marked the beginning of the new year in Egypt?
Well, are you talking about contemporary or ancient times?
Of course, ancient times. We're not here to talk about contemporary. New Year is on Thursday.
Yes, like as I already mentioned, like the Opit, like festival, like in currently, like moving from the El Karnak to El Luxor temple. That was the top one because that was the top deity for the ancient Egyptian by the time. But still we have other festivals, like we have Bastet. The goddess, the cow goddess, she was very famous in current day, like Sharqiya and the Kalaya Mansoura. And they use, like to have, like her statue, golden as well. And it was going to go through the Nile like in a park, like a boat. And they are going to stop on their way back to the south to Thebes and stop in every city and have, like a very merry and enjoyable time. They eat, they have banquets, and you remember the ancient Egyptians were the first people in history to brew beer. So that was even like at the pyramids, they were showing how many, like mugs of beer, like pints of beer given to one of the workers working at the building, the Great Pyramids of Giza. And they were the first people to distill wine as well. So this celebration was associated with food and drink. And I was talking to someone and he says, well, ancient Egyptian civilization was all coffins and mummification, all this. But I was talking last night to a number of tour guides asking about this. They confirmed it. They say that they had a very joyful time. They had cosmetics, they had perfumes, they had musicians, they had a very sophisticated lifestyle. And we can remember, like Prophet Joseph when he was in Egypt. And the lady, like he was living with the vice minister and his wife, like she invited the top ladies for a banquet and how they cut their fingers, like when he came into the main dining room, like. So it was a very sophisticated and joyful life. And if you look at the temples, like in Luxor and Aswan, Valley of the Kings and the Queens, we'll see the lifestyles. They have villas, swimming pools, showers, actually everything we have today. They even had a better standard of living 4,000 years ago.
Yes. Now, Dr. Abdel, the Egyptians were the first to follow the solar calendar, right?
Exactly, like that I missed is, like indicating at the beginning, like the solar is a calendar for Egyptians. It was very essential and significant because they divided the year to 360 days and they had 3 seasons. One is the flooding one. And they celebrated that, as I said, by the celebration of Amun and Mut, his wife, that was residing at the Luxor temple. And then after the 4 month, when the flood resides, like, and water comes down, they start sowing, like, and cultivating, like the fields. And after 4 months, it's going to be harvest time. So they had 3 seasons. And they have to work on a solar calendar because, like other civilizations, like look at the Arabian Peninsula, they needed the lunar calendar
Yes, I
because
was
they
just
have
going to ask you about the lunar.
because they travel during the night and they have to follow the stars. Why
Yes.
we didn't follow a lunar system? Because Egypt is blessed, like with plenty of water. So whenever you travel all over Egypt, you don't need only water until you go in Sinai, like cross. And they were the first people to make barrels filled with water when they have, like a war, like going up north to carry it with them, of course, in case, like they don't find water. But if you are lost in the desert, you die. That's why they follow the stars. For example, if you're going, like from Bahrain to Nagd, if you're going to Yemen to Syria, it's like 3,000 miles. And maybe like the water you're having, like you're going to lose it or whatever. So you have to follow a lunar system so that you don't get lost and you know directions. But in Egypt, the only directions we needed was the sun for the agriculture and farming the land, but not, like to use it for topography or something like that. So it's very distinctive.
Great. Yeah.
Between the 2 civilizations. You need the lunar, like for the GPS, for example,
Yes,
by the time.
understood.
That was, yeah. In ancient Egypt, and you need it as well when they sail, like when Queen Hatshepsut is having a marine, like commercial expedition going to the Somalia or current day Somalia or the land of Pont. When you navigate, like in the ocean, in the sea and the lakes, you need, like to follow a lunar system.
Yes.
But if a settled country and civilized like in Egypt, they needed only a solar one just for agriculture and for the cycle and the crops they do. And Egypt was a leading country by the time because it was the only one in the Middle East that have a reservoir of grains and granaries and we hear about the story of Prophet Joseph and their brothers and Prophet Abraham. All of them, they were coming to get food supplies from Egypt at the time.
Beautifully explained.
Sir, what are the beliefs and values of ancient Egypt, and what makes Egypt's culture unique?
Well, many historians, I read, like many literature and review it. And if you look at North Africa, the whole of North Africa is a massive desert. And then we have a sub-Sahara. After that, there is no life, like the areas of Chad and Niger and all this. We were blessed, to have the river Nile. That's why Herodotus was correct when he says, Egypt tendon de Nile, Egypt is the gift of the Nile. And they were very smart, the ancient Egyptians, to harness the river. They know how to control it and, wait. And every year, I was reading literature, and the flood stopped at 1970 when we built the Aswan Dam. And we lost part of the fertility of the soil of Egypt because every year we're getting like 1 inch of clay and mud, and that carries from the mountains, like of Ethiopia or last day Abyssinia, magnesium and potassium and calcium. I mean, we didn't need fertilizers by the time, but now you need to buy, fertilizers to support the land, and again, it's going to make the land, if you grow every year without the silt or the mud that comes from the flooding, the fertility goes down, and then the soil becomes weak. So it was very blessed, to have, that's why they call it Egypt, which means dark, black land, because of the fertility that comes. And that's what we got our name Egyptus.
Yes.
From the mud.
Yes, again, beautiful piece of information there, and the most fertile lands in the world, right? I mean, as you mentioned, Egypt was the reservoir for food, the basket of the food basket of the world at the time. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have here.
Dr. Abdel, the tourism counselor, of course, an encyclopedia that we never end information when we're with you, and it's always a pleasure to have you with us in Nile Cruise. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us, and of course, we wish you a wonderful year to come and a wonderful year ahead. I wish you all your dreams come true, and thank you so much for joining us in today's episode.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and look forward, inshallah, that 2021 will be a blissful year for Egypt, and we'll have 20 million tourists.
What I like about you, sir, is that you're always optimistic. You're full of optimism. You're full of positive energy. You're full of information. So thank you so much for joining us.
Alhamdulillah, being an Egyptian, that means you are. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Happy 2021, Dr. Abdel.
Thank you, sir.
On behalf of you.
Dear viewers, this segment of Nile Cruise ended. Stay with us, for we yet have more segments for you, dear viewers.